My name's Sam Martino. I run the video game studio, Dogwood Gaming. I started it here in Maryland almost 10 years ago now, which is absolutely bonkers to me. But I love video games, and all of the people that work with me also really love video games. And I've really loved that whenever we work on something, everybody who I work with has some game series or something. They're like, oh, this game did this really well. We should implement this. And I live by that a lot. Like, there are so many game design elements that I loved from game series that I always are like, this is the gold standard of what I want to be able to make. There's a game series called Crackdown, which I know some of you have played, which I'm so happy to hear. It's a very interesting game, and it's like, if I don't know, it's my like cocktail party discussion is to talk about Real-Time Worlds, a studio that made it in Crackdown, because it's one of my favorite game stories just to talk about Crackdown, because I think at the time I was probably one of the only people that bought it because I thought it was a cool looking game, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to start off with the company that made it, Real-Time Worlds, because they have the most amazing intro ever from the 360 era. I hope it works. Oh, don't fail me now. I can hear it. Oh. Let's see if it actually just plays in here. Maybe it's got something with the... Oop. Oh, yes, 3 frames a second. I love it, though, because they go from, like... I love it. I love it. It just like really sets up what the game is going to be, because it's so much fun with all that you can do with it, in that you are playing as essentially a super agent who is fighting against a city that has been totally taken over by crime. That was how Crackdown 1 was advertised. 2007 feels like a very, very, very long time ago, and it was something totally different. I mean, one of my favorite games of all time is Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and the reason I got it was because I had tricked my grandparents into buying it for me when I was 10, and I was so scared that my grandma was going to take it away because they were cursing in it that I just drove around and listened to the radio for hours, and so I fell in love with all the 80s music and everything, and so I like loved that genre of game. But there aren't very many games like Grand Theft Auto. We didn't get Saints Row until around this time period. So it's like, and this was kind of the other side where you're now going against the police, but it's open world, and I was like, cool, I'm 100% sold. This is exactly what I wanted. And I wanted to include, if they want to work for me, is I have the intro videos from the original ones, and I wanted to include these because the art style and everything changes so much. Remember that guy, because it's really important to this entire presentation. I thought this was cool when I was 13 years old. I thought this was the most amazing thing ever.
This is cool now. I mean, the foreshadowing is pretty cool, to be honest.
And like, I love the comic book style they did. Like, it's just.
I mean, it works when you consider it all, like, you consider this like a propaganda piece.
Yes. Anyway, so that's not why the game did well. That's why Crackdown Crackdown broke records. It was when it came out, it was one of the hottest games of 2007. It sold gangbusters, and it's because it was advertised that it came with the Halo 3 multiplayer beta, and I had no idea. I just thought Crackdown was cool, so I bought Crackdown, and all my friends are like, "Oh, can we come over and play the Halo 3 beta?" I'm like, "I don't have the Halo 3 beta," and they're like, "You bought Crackdown? What do you mean?" I apparently I had it, and it was always so funny because I eventually fell in love with Halo after playing Halo 3 on the 360, but it just like came with Crackdown, and I remember my dad had ordered Halo 3 as a pre-order, and we got it from Amazon, and this is back when Amazon had issues of breaking street date. I got Halo 3 a week early, and I didn't play it because I was still looking for agility orbs in Crackdown 1, which is like, Crackdown 1, it was interesting because it really felt like a game of the time. I mean, I can't remember. I think like of all the collectibles you have to find, there's like 900 agility orbs, I think, scattered across all the rooftops. And the way that your agility gets better and you can jump higher and do more is by getting all of these orbs. So like you end up spending hours jumping around the city and doing it, but it's not unenjoyable. Like the city is really exciting to explore, and I don't know, I think people hate it after a while, but I always thought it was endearing. This is like, very early days of like being able to do this, but that narrator would actually make comments as you played the game. And sometimes they would break because this is like very early days. Like you'd be on street level and he'd be like, "I can see my house from here." And then you'd like go on top of the agency tower and he'd be like, "Wow, you're deep underground." It's just, you'd like be blowing people up and he'd be like, "Barbecue." Like it's just like random things in the background. But it did so well, and like this was like one of the biggest successes for real-time worlds, and like there was just so much in it, and especially for like what it was for being such an early title. It like you were basically given a part of the city and the gang, and then you got brief information about the gang, and then you went after them, and like as you did different things, you discovered more about their hideouts and their locations, and all of these characters, no matter how low in the ranking they were, all had incredibly deep backstories and were like a part of the game. And like there's just a lot of really cool parts of this that were built at its core that nobody else had done yet. I don't think there really was an open world cops versus robber game like this at the time. So naturally they did what every successful game studio does, and they went and made an MMO. And I have a lot to say about APB. Yes. I loved this game. Loved, I have to say past tense, because while it does technically still exist it's not what it was. So APB's premise was, it was an MMO where half the players played as criminals and the other half played as cops. And you would go out in the city and the criminals would raid stores, mug people, like do general crimes, and the cops could respond to the missions and then actually come and like stop you. So it was always engaging. They, I think, had one of the best intros it wants to work. And I'm not sure if you guys were able to hear in the it's at 100%. Well, hopefully this works out. So this was the intro video. Oh, maybe? I'm so sorry. I don't know what.
Hit the Windows key and P.
My hero. Maybe? Duplicate. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Like I said, not my computer. I don't take blame. So this was the intro for APB. This was the original intro. I had to really dig to find some of these because they just don't exist anymore. It looks very much like Crackdown 1. Like they really stuck with a lot of the same art style. Anyway, I apologize for the terrible frames. What made APB so special for me was that they they did not need to do nearly as much as they did for APB, but they were like, can we do this in an MMO? We should try. And I mean, they really went all out with the art style in that they kept that same comic book style and stance from Crackdown 1 and really went into what you can do with the artistic design. There we go. So like, these were some of the original loading screens from APB. I loved them. Like these I thought this was so cool, and all the stuff you could do with the actual design, which is what I really want to take the time to talk about with this, is that there was a full Photoshop competitor, a full Ableton competitor. There were like professional level tools to do artistic and music design were in APB on launch, and you could use all of them. I have no idea who was in charge of like making these things happen, but it was to the point where like there was a curated radio station in the game of people that had made full production tracks like in the game, and like they sound like real songs. They went out and they had songs that became some of my favorites that I discovered through APB and ended up being huge songs. The very first time I ever heard 1901 by Phoenix, if anybody remembers that song, like 2009-ish, I heard that before I ever heard it on the radio because it was in APB. So whoever was doing their music really knew what they were doing. But I loved that you could make yourself be anybody you wanted. Like, I could go on for hours about the experiences of just the people that would make themselves into every superhero imaginable. You would be on the street and the Joker would run you over. And like you could have, like you could fully customize the car to look like anything, and then when you kill somebody, it can play any song you want, so people would just make like the themes of the people they were. This is my first Steam screenshot ever. I'm so happy that it's still saved on Steam, but me and my friends wanted to be the A-Team. And so I saw that you could get a van, and I was like, I could make the van like the A-Team van. And so they had around the city, there were these freestanding points where you could get to, and you could put anything you wanted up there, any tag you wanted. So obviously our gang tag was the A-Team, but like people, like I said, it's a full Photoshop equivalent art tool. So people would do like insane murals and just post them across the city, and people would make insane things, and the servers were full, and there was tons of stuff to do. And then it failed horribly. It failed terribly, and nobody played it, and they didn't make any money. And there's a couple reasons to why that could be pointed to, unfortunately. Like, a lot of it is, I don't want to say it's foresight, because there's things that are kind of hard to predict until you actually see it, because nobody had really done a big open world, like, cop and criminal MMO like that. And so they ended up making it so the police, instead of just having to kill criminals, which you could do, you also were able to tase them. And the only people that had access to tasers were the police. And the tasers would instantly stun you for like 10 seconds. And there was nothing you could do. They could shoot from across the map with the starter taser gun and you'd be done. So the only way the criminals could even compete was there was a very specific AK-47 that you got like level 80 that you had to grind to, because that was the only gun that could actually compete with the police. And so people gave up. And basically what it was that if you wanted money, you made a criminal character, and you would just, basically there were all these stores you could rob, and you would get in a van, you just drive straight in the van, and a bunch of TVs and VCRs spawn. It was great. It was like you would just be driving around, you'd see random people just looting stores. But and that's how you'd make money. But the problem is that if you did it enough, your notoriety level would hit a certain point to where people could join missions against you. And now if you're a low level that's just trying to make money, any cop can join what you're doing and you can't compete. No way. There was no way anybody could ever stand with it. And it made the action neighborhoods, which were where all the like gameplay aspects of the game happened, would just start to get empty. People didn't want to deal with it. And it was a subscription service to play this game at the time. I think it was like $14.99, so it wasn't cheap by any means. But what really killed them and was the nail in the coffin was all of those art pieces can be sold for in-game currency. And the map that they are in, this map was called the Social Hub, and you didn't have to pay a subscription to be in the Social Hub. The Social Hub had access to the Photoshop tool, the music tool, the card painting tools, everything. So what people would do is they would just go into this world, make a bunch of nonsense. This is what it looked like eventually. It was just flooded with blank screens because people would just submit blank art for the cost of a subscription token, and then people would just buy it, and then nobody ever paid for the game. And that was the end of it. And that killed Real-Time Worlds. And it's really sad because this was so unique, and it had such, I feel, really unique problems that like it's like how, you know, testing could have been done to fix the taser option, but like I still don't really know what you could give the cops that would make sense to counteract that. Like that was kind of the point of the police, was that you would tase and arrest the criminals. And also just at this point, it's been sold like 3 or 4 times now. I think it's owned by a mail.ru subsidiary, so it's a Russian MMO now, and they've like gutted a lot of it. And it's, you know, actually, I think it just recently changed again, and they're like doing all these updates, but it's just not what it was. And a couple years ago, they actually purged a bunch of the older content, and so all of that old music, all the stuff that was made by people, it's all just gone, unfortunately. That was like, you know, and this is a very like, I want to hype up Crackdown about this panel. Like this is very important to me, but I also want to stress like, it's sad that it's hard to find a lot of these images. And like I had to dig for a lot of this because it just doesn't exist anymore. Nobody backed it up, nobody documented it. And this was a pretty big MMO at the time with a ton of custom made content that's just gone, unfortunately. So this killed Real-Time Worlds, and the IP went back to Microsoft. And Microsoft kept it and decided that what they were going to do was use it as their release title every year for how they were going to show off the new consoles and the new technology. Crackdown 2, which was late 360, it was really interesting because they had taken a lot from what they had learned in Crackdown 1 and made the gameplay better. For people that have played like the Mass Effect series, do you remember how things changed between 1 and 2? And like, you lost a lot in 2, but the gameplay and gunplay was fantastic compared to what it was. I feel like that's pretty fair to what happened to Crackdown. But what I always found interesting, and you know, I think of like launch titles as like they're games that are meant to be, you know, show off the like technical prowess of the system, right? But Crackdown has maintained its story and its continuity since the beginning. And I really want to talk about that because there is somebody who is still working on this game who deeply loves it. And I don't know who it is, but they have made sure that no matter how ridiculous and nonsense the story gets, they have made it make sense and actually continue with what's happened. For sake of us not watching more 3-frame videos, I'm just going to go through Crackdown 2. The premise of Crackdown 2 was that the city is now controlled by this rebel group that has risen up, as well as these like super mutant style people that have shown up. And you think like, well, wait a second, I thought this was a cop game. Yes. And the reason that there are super mutants is because that doctor that was on screen, you arrested him and broke all of his experiments out of his lab, and those experiments are what actually led to Crackdown 2. Now it sounds like, okay, sure, like I mean that's like A leads to B, but like for a game that was reduced to a launch title for Microsoft, I'm thrilled that like they like bothered to keep that. And even to the point that like the story references like crime bosses from Crackdown 1 and things that you did in Crackdown 1 that I'm sure that when Microsoft greenlit this game did not expect people that played Crackdown 1 to play this game. This was not made as like a this is the real successor to Crackdown. It's no, this is the next game in the series. I have very vivid memories, and I was talking about it earlier, is that in the days of Xbox 360 demos, there were so many ways to break them. And one of my favorite things was that whenever somebody tried to include a timer or a wall to stop you from exploring places, there were always ways that you could get around it and break it. And in Crackdown 2, what they did is they gave you a 30-minute timer, and they made a giant red wall that surrounded the first city. But the demo is the full game. It's the entire game. They just limited what you can do. So there were two things. You either, as you launched the demo, you pulled the Ethernet cable out of your Xbox 360 and it disrupted your connection at just the right time, and so your timer locked and you could play forever. And then in the harbor, which is where you would start in Crackdown 2, there's a ton of agility orbs, and one of the big things they added in Crackdown 2 was a wingsuit, so you could now glide around the city. You could get your agility up to the high enough level for a wingsuit in the demo, and they didn't make their wall barrier high enough. So if you get to a certain building, yeah, you can glide straight over the barrier, and now you're in the rest of the city and you can play the whole game. It obviously wasn't polished, and I didn't play through the whole game, but it's like you can like fight like things that are outside the city. But I just thought it was so funny because I was like, man, like this is the state of the demo. I'm a little bit worried. And it was, but Crackdown 2, like as different as it was, I still genuinely enjoyed it. And I don't want to spoil the game because there's a lot more to it than just a cops versus robbers game. But they kept the same kind of villain and the same story, and I forget who said it was a propaganda piece, but that's a really good way to look at it, and that they kept it. Like, that's a far deeper story than what I would expect for them to continue with this. And unfortunately, it seemed like things were going in the right direction. But then we ended up with, something started auto-playing. Again, I'm so sorry, this is struggling on me. Oh, yep, it moved my slide. So we got Crackdown 3. And has anybody here played Crackdown 3? Really? Really? Oh, okay. I mean, that's why I played it. Yeah, and because I didn't have an Xbox One, it was on.
Microsoft promised it would be good.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Yep. Yeah, and why would they lie to you? Yeah. No, I mean, the only reason I ended up playing was because it was on Game Pass, and I was like, you know what, I should try Crackdown 3 because I haven't ever played it, and like, but I haven't heard good things. Yeah, it's a game. I don't know what they were. I don't know where we went with the story. I don't know what happened, and like, this makes it just so much better. It's such nonsense. Like, they were like, all right, Terry Crews, you're the face of the series. This is it. And Terry Crews is you know, he did a really good job. He really cares about that game. He is very, very animated. But this doesn't make any sense. Like, the whole premise is you show up at a different city that is like trying to control the world, and now you as the agents have to go and stop this city, all while making giant holograms of Terry Crews appear everywhere. And like, it's absolute nonsense. And I was like, I need to at least get through the story. I need to at least like know where we're at. And like, it's a slog. It makes no sense. It's a drag to get through. And I got to the end when they start to like finally make the big reveals and everything. They start pulling up pictures from Crackdown 1 and start talking about the doctor from Crackdown 1 and how he led all these events. And I'm like, really? I'm like, somebody, like, we got here? Like, and it's just, I can only imagine that there is just a guy who has been with this game, and he's like, no, I'm not going to let you completely take over what this story was. And it's a shame because Crackdown was so unique in what it was. Like, in being able to be a super agent was awesome. I loved all the things you could do, and that you leveled up by all these different actions, and how you played determined how you leveled up. Like, if you just went around punching people in Crackdown 1, you're eventually able to pick up cars and start throwing them at people. Like, it like motivates you and encourages you to keep doing these things. Same thing with like using guns and vehicles. And on top of it, they also started to add these DLC contents called Key to the City and Toy Box, which basically gave the console owners, like, here's a whole mod menu. Like, you can just access everything. You can spawn things, cars, change things, like mess all these things. Yeah.
And Dolge.
And what was?
The Dolge DLC as well, in 2.
Yes.
And extra free players.
And because like they gave out a lot of stuff, and it was stuff that was very like player centric. It wasn't in any effort to try and like milk more things out of it. It was like, oh, you guys are having fun with the game. Here's everything you need to do everything you want with it. And I just feel like you don't see that a lot. I don't want to make this a big a whole preachy talk about the game industry, but it's like, I just really appreciate when you can see how much care went into the game. And you can see that somebody took the time to actually go and make this something special. One of the big examples I always give is from Steambot Chronicles. Something that they did that I love is that every single NPC in that game is named. It doesn't matter who they are or how insignificant they are. Every single one of them has a name. I try to do that with all the RPGs that I make, and it's important because why are you going to talk to somebody who's not important enough to even have a name? It adds that much more to the immersion of the game and shows you that somebody cared enough to think about that. And that's a lot of what I got from Crackdown. And it's funny saying that, looking at Crackdown 3 and remembering my experiences playing that, but it's even though Microsoft has fully taken this over, and I would not be surprised if the next time we saw Crackdown 4 was whenever the new Xbox comes out. But that's what it's been relegated to, is it's now a launch title. And it's like, I wonder what if they've been able to continue working on APB. Like the things that game could have done. No one else has tried to do anything like that ever since. And that game came out like well over a decade ago now. And while it still exists in its form, and I think it's pretty interesting that even in the state it's in now, it still has active players. You can, if you go and want to play, it's called APB Reloaded now. You can actually still find matches, and you can still like play cops versus robbers, but it's not what it was. And it just makes me sad because, like I said, there is no more real-time worlds. They are completely gone. But those holograms you turn to Terry Crews. That's pretty much the game, is you go around and make everything Terry Crews. But like I said, I wanted to be about Crackdown, but I also really wanted to be about real-time worlds because I talk about them a lot. They were a very special studio, and they just didn't exist for very long. Like, I really have to, I wish I could have gone and found out like what happened to all the developers of it. It wasn't a small studio. Like, they've all gone off and done different things, but I'm sure that all of them still carried that same passion and everything that they felt from working on Crackdown. And even though it is what it is now, you can still see remnants of it. And I 100%, I mean, it's hard to play Crackdown now. Like, if you want to play the original one, you have to have an original Xbox 360. But it's one of those games that if you like what they're doing with the gameplay, which not many people have done. Actually, there was Agents of Mayhem. Does anybody remember that? Made by the Saints Row people. This is better than Agents of Mayhem. This is much better. And it's appreciated because you can play through all the games and you're getting a full series. It doesn't feel like you're just playing the next launch title. You're actually getting the next part of the story. I'm not sure if they can continue it. I think it'll feel kind of weird if they just continue to reference the same guy from Crackdown 1 over and over and over again a decade on. But I'm genuinely really interested to see what they do with it. I also, like, the IP is kind of in a strange state because Microsoft holds it and they just kind of license it to whoever. Like, I don't even know if Ruffian would work on the fourth one. It could be an entirely different game studio. So I'm interested to see what happens to it. I've spent thousands of hours on Crackdown 1, definitely not nearly enough on Crackdown 2, but I love it. There's just nothing else like it, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it and talk about it because I have played all of them, Crackdown 3 more than I'd like to. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about Crackdown. I'm genuinely surprised that there were many people interested and that have played it. When I did the Steambot Chronicles panel, I think maybe one person had played it out of the entire room. So definitely, if you have the patience, maybe a strong drink, play Crackdown 3 because it is free on Game Pass. If you have Game Pass, it doesn't cost you anything except 100 gigabytes. But yeah, modern gaming. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I'll open it to questions. Thank you. Yes?
So, the question I do have for you is, and I don't know if this is more so like an opinion or a fact kind of thing. Sorry, it's a little...
No, you're fine. I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. So this might be more maybe opinion, less than fact, but you know more about Crackdown, I think, than
I try.
do you think that they stopped Halo 3 multiplayer beta on the game because they didn't believe that it was selling?
Yes, 100%. It's actually really sad because if you look at any of the articles, and because they wrote a lot of articles about Crackdown 1 when it was coming out, all of them are like, we don't think this is going to be anything. They're like, no, like, go buy the Halo 3 multiplayer beta. It comes with a free game. Like, that was the joke, is like, nobody actually wanted Crackdown. But
Because like no one's ever done anything like Crackdown since. It's like basically GTA meets Hitman.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's an absolutely insane game. He's back to Kazooie, yeah.
Well, of course, the joke is that Saints Row 4 is basically a Crackdown sequel.
yes, yeah,
Jumping on buildings and collecting glowy balls.
yeah. And
But anyway, I actually wanted to share with you, I have a little story on this Crackdown. So,
oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to like have it end, but I guess people kind of filled out before I was done with questions. I apologize. Oh, here. I want to hear it.
Thank you much. I actually have a bit of a fun story about Crackdown. So I've always been a Sony pony.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed PlayStations. Not so much in the beginning of the PlayStation 3 era. That was so dire. I thought it was pretty much inevitable. I'm gonna have to get myself one of those 360s in order to, once I finish with my PS2 backlog. And when Crackdown was announced, considering how many hours I sank into Spider-Man 2 on the PS2,
Oh, yeah.
I was oh yes, this is going to be the game for me. And I swear, like the day before I had decided to get to the game to come out, I was going to get a 360. That's when Infamous was announced on the PS3, and I'm like, damn it, that's
so funny. Yeah.
you know, I playing a Spider-Man game as Electro. Gee, I think I'm actually going to go for that instead. So yeah, I got a PS3 in like 2008, late 2008, way later. But I would. I certainly knew a lot of people who had 360s, and I like to, quiz them by saying, "Can you guess what 360 exclusive game almost convinced me to buy a 360?" And all of them, without fail, would say Halo 3. Nope, that's not it. Okay, how about Gears of War? Nope, that's not it. Well, Fable, obviously, right? Nope, that's not it. Keep going. I can't think of another Xbox exclusive game. That was a timed exclusive at the time. I think it was already announced that was coming at that point. At that point, but then after nobody remembered Crackdown, which had just come out like a year prior, and eventually I decided to change the question to, can you name a Xbox exclusive game that isn't Halo, Gears, or Fable? Out of 25 people, one guy thought of Forza.
Yeah.
And that's it. I've never met anyone else who could think of another Xbox exclusive, and I think that might be why PS4, the PlayStation's kind of on top again.
Yeah, I know, because they just haven't done anything. And like, I forget when Crackdown 3 came out. It's not a recent game.
It was 2019, I thought it said?
Yeah, 2019. Yeah. So like, and I feel like we're due for Crackdown 4. I don't know. And it's like, honestly, like, Crackdown 3 is still Crackdown at its core, but it's so different from what it was. And like, I'm a bit worried that they're either going to pull a Saints Row and be like, we're going to redo the whole game for modern audiences. And
Oh, that, okay.
Yeah, so,
I thought you were going to say, we're going to say you're the president now and fight aliens. That's what you're
Yeah.
doing. You're like, oh, no, then that there was another Saints Row after that, wasn't there? Shoot.
yeah, and that's the thing, is I just hope that they end up doing more with it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I still can't believe that the champion Crackdown 2 speedrunner's in here. That's the most insane thing to me.
Okay, well, I guess I'm coming up to talk.
Yeah, no, please.
So, hello to those of you who are still here that don't know who I am. That's half of you, I guess. I'm the world record holder for Crackdown 2, any percent. That's unimportant. But what is important is I'm here to fact check you.
Please.
So you did say that Crackdown 1's only on the 360. Not true in the current year. Crackdown 1 and 2. So we're getting to the Crackdown 4 conversation after this, because this actually ties into it pretty importantly. Crackdown 1 and 2 are on Xbox One and Xbox Series for free, regardless if you have gold or not.
Really?
They're completely.
Did they remaster them? Or
No.
They just re-released them. Oh.
They're not re-released. They're the 360 ports.
Oh. Wow.
They are just.
Okay.
They are just. And the DLC is completely free. All the avatar cosmetics are completely free.
What?
And it's been like that now for about 5 years.
And that's what I'm saying. Is it's like even stuff that sounds like why would they not promote that? You would think they would.
Because the series is dead, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news upon this, but like that's really what it feels like.
Yeah.
You're talking about Crackdown 4, and it sounds like me from when I had hope.
Yeah,
it's
well,
like
it's the same thing with like after I saw what happened with the Saints Row series. It was like
Yeah.
I wanted to hope for the new Saints Row to be good, but I just don't know.
And this all happened. I'm sorry. This all happened in 2019. Like a few months after Crackdown 3 launched, they put 1 and 2 on 360. They put 1 and 2 on Xbox One and just said get rid of it. Crackdown 3 permanently went down on price. It's always bundled with Game Pass. You know, it's been the Game Pass game since day one. I don't know if they have any ideas for the series. It doesn't feel like it because, again, they haven't promoted the fact that 1 and 2 are even on. And on series, the emulation is so bad that the guns bleed. Whenever you use the SMG, instead of ejecting shells, it ejects purple blood. The emulation on series is so bad.
I'm sure.
And it's the only game I've played that's backwards compatible that is that bad. It's so slapdash. So something's up.
Yeah.
Something feels up with these. And if you've got an Xbox of any kind, you really should download these. They are free while you still can.
Yeah.
Because who knows what's going to happen to them. And the games are still good, regardless of what state they're in.
Yeah.
They're worth playing for sure. And, you know, the 360 store had them all for free too, until that closed recently.
Yeah.
But they still do exist. So you
That's good
can
to
still
know.
get them.
I'm so glad because I've been like holding on to my Xbox Crackdown copy. Is like I hope nothing happens to it. I don't know if I can get this replaced. No, I like I said, it's there has to be it's one guy who really still cares about it. It's still
That's what it feels
because
like.
it doesn't like there are lots of games that have had a similar situation to this that they died and there was nothing redeemable at all. But like I said. You don't go to the effort of making those fan callbacks, and like those are things that if you play Crackdown 3 and you haven't played Crackdown 1, it means nothing to you. It
Yeah,
does nothing to the
literally
story, it does
nothing.
And they didn't have to do it. So I don't know. I'm wondering that like if they do a Crackdown 4, is he still going to be there, or is this going to just be the end of Crackdown no more, or are they even going to bother? And then
They got to come back to the hand at some point. They got to come back to wherever the agent from Crackdown 2, you know, his hand ended up in the test tube in the post-credit scene. They got to come back to that at some point if they come back to the series. I don't understand why they decided to completely forgo that altogether for 3. I don't know what the hell happened with 3's plot at all. But
Terry Crews.
I guess so. But I don't know. Crackdown 3 is one of the weirdest games I've ever played.
Yes.
Because much like you, I have a huge attachment to Crackdown 1 and 2. And Crackdown 3 just kind of feels like a wet fart in my direction. Like, it's not really anything special, which I don't know how you managed.
Dragon? Isn't that like part of it?
Yeah. Like, I don't know how you managed to take something as unique as Crackdown, keep all the core elements of it, and also make it feel generic. Like, that's impressive.
Well, yeah, it's so funny because like one of the quotes from the game series has always been skills for kills. Like as you kill people, your skills go up. Literally, that's all Terry Crews yells at you in 3 is skills for kills, and it's like even that just feels forced.
Well,
And
that works in Skyrim too. That's not
yeah, exactly.
And I'll put the mic down. I have one more point that I wanted to bring up because I did make a joke about it and I was heckling you while you were saying this. But one of the initial sales pitches, if you remember from Crackdown 3 before it came out, was that the city itself was going to be fully destructible. And it was going to use everyone's Xbox put together to cloud compute the entire city being destructible. They were trying to sell you downloadable RAM. Legitimately.
Yeah.
They were trying to get...
Was that an E3 promise?
It was an E3 promise, and they doubled down the year later on their own press conference. And that is what became the destruction mode in the multiplayer, where that untextured city that's like a building that runs like garbage on any modern PC, because that cloud computing thing obviously was never going to work.
Yeah.
But what a fun idea, honestly.
God,
like
if only.
if they just like... I can't tell if Crackdown 3 is the most or least ambitious game I've ever seen in my life. Because if they just went one direction, either way with it, it would have became something. But it just kind of ended up feeling like nothing. And that's sad.
Yeah.
And I hope that Crackdown 4 does exist someday. I hope that I'm not
I hope we're here next MAGFest talking about how excited we are for the release.
Absolutely.
Of Crackdown 4 with
I
the
hope
new
to.
Xbox.
I hope to be there alongside you with our new Switch Xboxes that are, that are our home console. We got Crackdown on the go.
Oh, dreams.
Dreams. But thank you.
Of course, thank you. Are there any more questions or comments? I've been.